Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. Got you covered. Traditional leagues, dynasty leagues, PPR leagues, IDP league, even daily fantasy football league. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
And finally, Ryan Basulto has come back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. If you like wrestling, that was a terrible impersonation of my man, the Dwayne Johnson, a.k.a. The Rock. We are back. Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. We are glad to have you back, and I am your host, Ryan Basulto. We are back. We have some good stuff to talk about. A lot of it has to do with rookie quarterbacks and the future. We're going to talk about the Niners and what they're doing with their quarterback situation because they recently have moved up in the draft. We are going to talk about the Jets. Are they going to take Zach Wilson? And is Zach Wilson the man in NY to finally take over since the Mark Sanchez? And remember, when we talk about all this football news, we're talking about fantasy implications along with it. And we're going to talk about the rest of the buzz going around in the NFL. Leonard Fournette resigned. Some good things to talk about when it comes to fantasy. And if you stick around at the end of the show, I am going to talk about and break down what IDPs mean and what they can do for your future fantasy football leagues. But first, we are going to talk about the number one news that has been hitting the NFL. It is the San Francisco 49ers. They recently traded up to get the third overall pick from the Dolphins to trade, and they traded their number 12 pick, also along with a 2021 third round pick and first round picks in 2022 and 2023. The Dolphins just robbed them silly. The Niners knew what they had to do. The Niners had to move up if they wanted to get any of the premier quarterbacks. They had to. We already know what the Jacksonville Jaguars were doing with their pick. They're going with Trevor Lawrence. It's not even funny. They're not even going to other people's pro days because they just know. There was even a report saying that they were on track to get Trevor Lawrence, which who knows what that means. That means they're just going to get him. It is what it is. Urban Meyer knows what he wants, and that is what he wants. The Dolphins have two, and they know what they want. So they didn't mind trading away with the Niners. The second pick, we're going to talk about that later, but we think he might go to a BYU guy. They might go with a BYU guy in Zach Wilson. They know if they wanted to get Trey Lance or even Mac Jones, apparently. Yes, the Niners are all over the place, and they are trying to make moves. They traded 3 first rounders and a third round pick. NFL is a lot different in the NBA in the sense they trade their first rounders like they're chips. They just give them away. They're like, okay, you want some first round picks? Oh, that's like some chips right here. Here you go. I have a bag of chips is what I'm referring to. I'm a hot Cheeto guy. Some guys aren't into, or females aren't into hot chips, but I like the hotter the better for me. That's how I think. If I'm not sweating and I am not going the whole time, the chips aren't good. But anyways, the point is the Niners had to move up and they had to trade their whole future because what they did is they knew that they already signed all the people that they needed to sign. They signed Trent Williams. They signed a receiver. They're they're looking for the future, and they want that rookie quarterback is what it's looking like. Peter Schrager said the Niners put themselves in a position to get a QB because a lot of people in the top 10 want a QB, specifically the Panthers. The Panthers still have Teddy Bridgewater, who we're not sold on, especially in fantasy. Just no, don't draft Teddy Bridgewater in fantasy football. Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Then we're talking about the Jets. The Jets want a quarterback, but once again, I think the Jets are going to get someone else. But the Jets are still going to get someone. We know that Trevor Lawrence is going with the first pick, as I said it before. The Broncos are looking for a quarterback too. They're at pick number 9. The Niners were at the 12th pick. They were on the outside looking in. Before you know it, Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, Trey Lance, Zach Wilson, and Mac Jones will all be gone in the first 10 picks. Because most of those teams need quarterbacks. So they knew that they had to do this. This is the first time a team in NFL history has moved up to the 3rd pick to get a quarterback after winning 2 years after winning a Super Bowl. Within 2 years. That's crazy. They just went to Super Bowl with Jimmy G, who outplayed Patrick Mahomes 3 quarters out of 4, which is funny because that's all Patrick Mahomes needs, and that's why he's the greatest quarterback in the world. But Jimmy G outperformed him, and they're not sold on him. There's already rumors that's been said that even people in New England's locker room, reports have been saying that they've called him Mr. Glass because he's gonna get hurt. He's made out of glass. He's washed goods. He's gonna be broken. And the Niners also saw that the NFC West is really aggressive. They saw Seattle they're trying to do everything they can to keep Russell Wilson. They saw the Rams get rid of Goff and then just already get Matt Stafford. After a couple years removed from a Super Bowl loss. They were a Super Bowl contending team, and last year they had the number 1 defense, yet you're not satisfied. That also has to do with Sean McVay and Jared Goff's relationship. After Jared Goff lost to, the Niners, and lost to C.J. Beathard this year, that relationship couldn't be mended. There was no way. There was just absolutely no way because Sean McVay's like, you lost to, we have the best defense and you lost to a 3rd stringer? Not even Nick Mullins or Jimmy G. You lost to C.J. Beathard. Like, after that, he was cut off of him. But the NFC West is aggressive. The Cardinals got J.J. Watt and A.J. Green. They're trying to do everything they can to actually win now. They're not saying, oh, we're young. They're saying, hey, we're win now. That's kind of how the West is. The West is ready to be progressive, to move with the times. That's kind of how all these NFC West teams have gone. I mean, if you look at teams in like the Midwest, like the Packers, Aaron Rodgers, even though they have Jordan Love, they don't want to move off on him. They're not going to be that aggressive, even though they lost the NFC Championship the last 4 times. The South, quarterbacks in the South, teams in the South are more traditional. They also want to stick with their talent. The NFC West is really aggressive, and that's just kind of how like California is. Those teams aren't in California. But if you really think about it, like the Niners, they're part of California. They're kind of part of California. They're part of California, and Californians are more optimistic. There's a Western sensibility, like go for it. So that's what the Niners did. They went for it. They went aggressive. Kyle Shanahan knows his legacy is on the line. He knows it's on the line. He's got Sean McVay over here, his best friend, on the other side of a division rival, doing better than him. You don't think that eats him up? I know they're best friends, but you've never played basketball with someone in your backyard. You never had any type of competition, maybe even rock, paper, scissors. You love your best friend, but you want to win. You want to win at all costs. And Kyle Shanahan has a big legacy to live up to, by the way, because if you didn't know at home, which I don't know why you wouldn't know, also listening to the Fantasy Football Podcast, Kyle Shanahan gets all his Shanahanigans from his dad, Mike Shanahan, who used to run the ball 60% of the time in Denver when he was the head coach over there. So Kyle Shanahan's run-heavy offense isn't something that just came out of the blue. His dad has been doing it for a long time. There's a legacy left behind him. Mike Shanahan has won 2 Super Bowls. Kyle Shanahan already been to 2 Super Bowls. Lost both. Crazy dramatic fashion. And I would feel like if Kyle Shanahan, and it's good that I'm talking about that he is a run first heavy guy, because if you noticed, they're really one dimensional. That's why everyone always talks trash about the Niners. Oh, you guys are just going to run it all the time. You're just going to run it. That's it. Just run. We're not scared of you just running the ball all day. So he needs to get rid of this narrative, change his legacy. They traded up. They saw that they got everyone they wanted. They re-signed everyone. They want that rookie deal. They really, really do. They really want that rookie deal that entails that they only have to pay him $5 million this next year. $6 million. Because of the cap rule next year. The cap rule actually lessens the money that people have next year. They want Mac Jones, apparently. That's what came out today. Apparently, Mac Jones fits Kyle's offense. He's mobile and is pro-ready because of his offense that he ran in Alabama. Mac Jones is also going to be has another Alabama Pro Day, and the Niners said that they're going to be there. They are going to be there for the next one too. So it kind of looks like they're at ties and kind of, pulling apart within themselves on who they really want. Mac Jones is phenomenal. But Justin Fields, think about him. Mac Jones is he's on a short list of all the people from Alabama and quarterbacks from Alabama that are fantasy relevant. First off, I think he could change the narrative, but he's on a short list. But if anyone's on a shorter list, it's Justin Fields. Even though he's amazing, he's going to kill it his first year. In my opinion, he's once in a generation. There was people like Troy Smith, Cordell Jones, Braxton Miller. All these people have been before him and have all failed in the NFL level. And Dwayne Haskins too. We're seeing him failing on the Washington football team as he can't get his mature act together. But Shanahan said that the 49ers have another opportunity to see Justin Fields to throw after speaking with his agent, so that they made the decision easy to go to Alabama's Pro Day. Because they're going to go, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch are going to go to Alabama's Pro Day. And then the offensive coordinator from the 49ers is going to go to Justin Fields' Pro Day workout. So that's going to be interesting. Pro Day is just interesting to me in general because a lot of people get hyped up off all this stuff that means absolutely nothing. Like, they're just going in circles, rolling left, rolling right, throwing it deep. Yeah, it shows that they know what they're doing, but there's guys like Patrick Mahomes who do no-look passes for a living. Dan Marino has done there's film of him doing a 50-yard behind-the-back pass, perfect, in the corner of the end zone. Granted, it wasn't live in-game, but Dan Marino and guys like that and Patrick Mahomes can do all this stuff on the money because they're professionals, and that's what you're supposed to do. So Pro Day, I guess, shows do the stuff you're supposed to do before we get too flashy and start thinking about everything else and yada, yada, yada. Kyle Shanahan also said to move up to 3, we had a feeling good that we had to feel good. There'd be 3 guys we'd feel comfortable leading our team for a long time. 49ers are also open to trading Garoppolo, but only if they're blown away by an offer. Shanahan says he felt strongly that they'd be left standing at the altar at 12, as I said before. And yeah, I don't think that they're sold on Jimmy G just because of how he gets hurt all the time. He's been hurt 2 out of the last 3 years. The only year he doesn't get hurt, which is how Jimmy G kind of operates, is when he has a fire under him, he plays better. Granted, he plays better. But Jimmy G is lacking the best ability, especially in fantasy football. Availability. Best ability of all time. Sorry, I have the hiccups. Yes, best ability of all time. Bill Parcells said it. Bill Parcells is one of the greatest coaches in NFL history. In sports history, more like it. he's never on the field. So if we're not going to have him on the field, why would we trust the Niners offense in fantasy? And why would we trust their offense with a rookie? I think you would be happier to see Justin Fields behind the Niners quarterback, behind the Niners line, or Mac Jones as opposed to Jimmy G. And here's why. Jimmy G's afraid to throw it deep. He's got that Alex Smith type of, I guess you could say, lack of confidence, where I'm comfortable because I could throw 0 to 20. He throws 0 to 20 89% of his career. 0 to 20, 0 to 20, 0 to 20, 0 to 20. Now, him doing that is limiting a lot of stuff. And that's why Patrick Mahomes is also a great player. And I'm just modeling him or comparing him to that because Patrick Mahomes is the model QB, especially in the new wave. Patrick Mahomes could throw it deep going off his back foot. But if he was a normal quarterback and wasn't some crazy, awesome fantasy athlete, that should definitely be a top 2 round pick because he should be the first quarterback taken off the board next year. Patrick Mahomes could throw on the dime. 60 yards down the field. Now that opens up a lot. That brings the safeties back more. You know what happens when the safeties drop back more and they're worried about the deep ball? That means the underneath routes will happen more. Underneath routes, that's when you will worry and be happy with, not worry, the defense will worry. Be happy with Deebo Samuel. Be happy with Brendan Ayuk, George Kittle. These guys will do shallow routes, under routes, routes within 5 yards on the route tree. And they will get open because everyone has to play soft coverage, a.k.a. you have to play back. They have to play soft coverage, so it'll leave these underneath routes open, which will get them more fantasy points. If you're playing PPR, this is a dream. This is exactly what you want. The problem is Jimmy G only wants to throw 0 to 20 yards, and guess what? The Niners are a run-first offense. They're going to run it. They run it over 60% of the time. Tevin Coleman, Raheem Mostert. Tevin Coleman's now out, which helped them out. They have Raheem Mostert, but I think they're banking that Jeff Wilson's a better version of Tevin Coleman because even though he got hurt twice last year, he did come back from both. One was a concussion. Jeff Wilson is a fine running back, third-year back. He is awesome. I would definitely pick him up in fantasy before I pick up Raheem Mostert just because Raheem Mostert only played 4 games last year. And out of those 4 games, he only scored over 10 fantasy points twice. So why would you want him? It doesn't make sense to me why you would get anyone in this offense. Jimmy G, his best season he's ever had. Best season Jimmy G could have. 3,978 yards, 27 touchdowns, 13 picks. That's the best one out of his 4 seasons with the Niners. Out of his 4 seasons with the Niners, best thing you give me is under 30 touchdowns and still 13 picks? No. He just helps run the ball and manage a game. Yes, he knows how to win. And what helps is that you have a guy like George Kittle, a guy like Deebo Samuel, and Brendan Ayuk who all playmakers. The reason they're playmakers is because, oh, hey, here's the play. It's towards you. Okay, I'm going to make it, and I'm going to do something with it. That's what playmakers do. The Devin Hesters, the Deion Sanders, the Rod Woodsons, the Charles Woodsons. All these guys are ballers. And yes, you could tell I was defensive head by all the guys I named. Yes. These guys are all ballers. I don't know. I'm still not sold on it, but if Mac Jones is on the waiver wire and you're in a 12-man league, I'm looking at him. And he goes to the Niners. I'm looking at him. Or Justin Fields. If Justin Fields goes to the Niners, he might be the 15th pick for me. If someone lets him go that far. If they don't let him go that far, please. Like I said, I got Justin Herbert in the waivers with Ryan Tannehill. I do this. I get my waiver stuff. There's waiver quarterbacks all around. You do not need to always draft a quarterback or reach for a quarterback if other positions are available. But you already know Jimmy G is going to get hurt if he's gotten hurt 3 out of 4 seasons. You already know that Justin Fields knows how to run mobile and that offense, they could run it similar to a Cliff Kingsbury Cardinals type offense where Kyler Murray, who had the most average yards per carry, could be the same thing in Justin Fields. I see a lot of similarities within them. They're both tiny. They both know how to use their feet. They're both mobile, agile. Kyler Murray is just a rare prospect because he also is a beast at baseball. So that helps him a lot in a sense too. He knows how to slide a lot better. He knows how to. He's more agile too. He's has better hand-eye coordination. So that means he's probably got quicker reflexes. Yeah, it's a little different, but Justin Fields, he's the most interesting fantasy prospect. But if Jimmy G is the quarterback, get George Kittle in fantasy, but be wary. If he gets hurt, don't be surprised. Make sure you get like a Logan Thomas, Kyle Pitts, Noah Fant in later rounds. But yeah, we were talking about a lot of good Niners stuff, especially if you're a Niners fan. But we still got to talk about everything that's happening in the NFL. We still got to talk about what are the Jets going to do with their pick. And I'm going to explain what IDPs are, individual defensive players, and what they could do for your next year in Fantasy Football League when we come back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Hello, future fantasy football champions. We are back at the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. I am still Ryan, and we are still here grinding out all the fantasy football news because there's no fantasy football going on exactly right now, but everything in the NFL has direct implications on your fantasy year, so you have to know everything that's going on with your team or other teams around the league because, remember, the beauty about fantasy football is I'm a Broncos fan, and I don't have to draft one Bronco all next year. I don't. I didn't do it last year, and I didn't do it the year before that. And you know why I didn't draft a Bronco last year? Because you don't have to be biased or be a homer on your team. Just love your home team and just draft them. You draft with logic. You draft with reason. You draft with me and us at the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. But yes, fantasy football is so fun and great. But you know where it isn't fun or great at all? The New York Jets locker room right now. Because they are just completely confused on what they want to do or kind of how to run that franchise. Zach Wilson just had a pro day the other day, and it looks more and more as if the Jets are going to take Zach Wilson with the second overall pick in the draft. Makes you think, wow, what happened to Sam Darnold? Well, I guess he isn't a thing anymore. And I guess they don't want to trade him, but the Jets GM and Robert Saleh, the new Jets head coach, all went to BYU's pro day to go see Zach Wilson, the new and up-and-coming probably rookie phenom. I think he's great, but if he goes to the Jets, ugh. And a big reason why the Niners moved to the 3 pick was because they knew that all their guys are going to be taken in part because of Robert Saleh and the Jets. They asked around and they said, hey, are we going to get Zach Wilson? Are we going to get Zach Wilson? And then everyone's like, nah, I think the Jets are just going to get him. So then I was like, dang, like now we got to get the 3rd pick then? Like, that's not what we wanted. We wanted Wilson, but the Jets weren't budging. They did not want to trade their number 2 pick at all. The Jets And the Jets probably asked him, hey, are you guys going to draft Zach Wilson if you get it? Like, be honest with us. It's going to tamper all of our friendship because we're just rich billionaires talking amongst ourselves and just trading people like it's money and and all that nonsense together. But, yeah, they talked to each other and they said, oh, no, we're going to get Zach Wilson. So they said, well, then we'll just trade with the Dolphins, whatever. So I think that Zach Wilson would do very good for the Jets, if not better than Sam Darnold. Because even Trevor Lawrence knew. He texted at Zach Wilson's pro day when he saw his throws and everything that are so crazy. Oh, wow. Look how Zach Wilson just rolled to the left. That was astonishing. That was crazy. He rolled to the left and kept going and going and going and going, and then he threw it. The guy was like wide open, and there wasn't a defender in sight. But wow, that was what a marvelous throw, marvelous throw. I'm just being annoying. So Zach Wilson, last year in BYU, this is really going to sell you on him. These stats alone: 3,692 yards, really good for having a 12-game season. 33 touchdowns. Okay, that's awesome. How many picks do you throw, though? 3. And that's why everybody wants him. He looks like a quarterback who's ready now. His arm is amazing. Probably top 2 in the draft, right behind Trevor Lawrence, who's a generational talent. But that's another time, another place to talk about that. Zach Wilson in fantasy football would kill it how Justin Herbert is doing. He would replicate the same type of numbers, around 4,000 yards, 30 touchdowns, probably like 8 to 10 picks. He wasn't the starter the year before that 2020 season. So when he wasn't the starter, he threw 2,300 yards, 11 touchdowns, 9 picks, 62% throwing. Oh, I forgot to say, last year he threw 73%. 73% completion percentage. And that's why Peter Schrager even said, Fox NFL reporter, he said that it's looking more and more likely as if the Jets are just going to take Zach Wilson, and that's what it is. And that is what it is. And the Jets are just going to do it because they have a history of just doing this. We can all remember when the Jets had Geno Smith. And they had Geno Smith. Or no, they had Mark Sanchez, sorry. They had Mark Sanchez, and he just took them to 2 AFC championships back-to-back. They lost both years, but still the best part of Jets history. Next to Joe Namath winning that Super Bowl. But that was forever ago. Who even remembers that? So then they draft Geno Smith and try to have them have a little quarterback competition. But they say, no, we want Mark. Geno's just there just in case. Just because we're comfortable with getting him. You know what that did? As soon as Mark Sanchez was doing the butt fumble and all that nonsense, boom, he was out. And it wasn't even his fault. And a lot of times in the Jets organization, it's not your fault. It's unfortunate. Rex Ryan was their coach at the time of Mark Sanchez. What did that do? He just focused on defense the whole time. That's all he was worried about. He was worried about defense. And yes, it helped, but what about the offense? The offense can't carry itself all the time. They're going to figure out your schemes and strategies. You can't come up with one offensive strategy. I always say it. NFL film, it always catches up to you. Every single time you think you're good, you think you're RG3, you think you're Lamar Jackson, wrong. NFL film is new ways of guys that are just as fast as you, just as strong as you, if not stronger, catching up to you and making plays. And then who'd they get as a coach after that? They got Todd Bowles, another defensive-heavy guy. They got another defensive-heavy guy who was focused on the defensive end as opposed to Sam Darnold his rookie year and anything else. So then who else did they get? They got Adam Gase. And Adam Gase is just one of the worst coaches. He led them to one of the worst win percentages in Jets history. This year they barely won 2 games. Shouldn't have even won the games, which is worse because they were supposed to tank and get Trevor Lawrence, and they couldn't even do that right. The Jets are just mishandled in every way. Now look, the problem is not his arm, Zach Wilson's arm. He has a good arm, can make all the requisite throws. He's got what it takes. But Zach Wilson's thin. At a little under 215, Can he take all the hits in the NFL level? He's 210. Can he take all the hits in the NFL level? Can he handle New York City? New York City's brutal, man. They'll chew you up. You've seen what they do to Carmelo, Amari Stoudemire. I'm talking about basketball. What they've done with Mark Sanchez, what they do with Rex Ryan, what they've done with all these. They chew you and spit you out. Adam Gase, they even made him look terrible by the end of his career. No one's going to want to hire him as a head coach in the NFL because of the New York Jets. They know how to just not play these things right and muck everything up. So can the New York City limelight be too big for the BYU kid out of Utah? And the problem is also he didn't play against LSU, Florida, SEC schools, even some Pac-12 schools. Played against San Diego State, UCF, Boise State, who, don't get me wrong, Boise State was still ranked this year, still top 25 in the nation. These schools are still great schools, but they're not guys like you're going to see Trayvon Diggs and Patrick Surtain on the other end, along with Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, and Jerry Jeudy on one side. Alabama has it all. Like, if you're not playing these big-time schools all the time, so what's going to happen when you go to the big-time level? We don't know, but what we do know is what he has. What would Zach Wilson have if he were given the starting opportunity over Sam Darnold? Well, he has Tevin Coleman in the backfield. That's his starting running back right now because they haven't re-signed Le'Veon Bell and they have not re-signed Frank Gore. They have Elijah McGuire second string, but who cares? We're talking about people who could help us in fantasy football right now because it's still the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast where we make regular and everyday people champions, because that's what we do. We're all champions. I'm a champion, and I'm going to give you the sauce to be a champion. I understand a lot of this is NFL news, but like I said, this all has to do with teams and NFL offenses that we could stay away from or get closer to because of this free agency talk, because of this NFL talk. We need all this talk because it makes you a champion and it makes you more versed in football, so you know every single little thing. You need to know everything. You know everything from schedules to tendencies to who plays better in this type of weather. You need to know everything in fantasy football. Every little piece helps, and I'm trying to help you. And you know who's trying to help Zach Wilson? Tevin Coleman in that backfield. Last year, got hurt, had a terrible year, rushed 28 rushes for only 53 yards, 58 yards all year. Now look, let's go over Tevin Coleman's whole career because he has played 6 years in the NFL, and he has rushed for a total of 2,937 yards, 4.2 yards per carry, which is promising. If any running back is averaging a little over 4 yards per carry, he is moving the chains. Remember, if you want a first down, 4 yards per carry is all you need. 4 yards on the first down, 4 yards on the second down, 4 yards on the third down. Guess what? That's 12 downs out of 10. Boom. First down. That's all you need. That's great, vital running back. And to say that he's done that over 6 years is truly impressive because he has not been on the best teams all the times. Yes, the Falcons were good when he went there to the Super Bowl, and he went back to go with his boy Kyle Shanahan, but he's been part of some terrible years too. This year in particular, he's had 12 touchdowns, 117 catches for 1,200 yards, and 12 touchdowns in his career. He's a great pass-catching back. If Zach Wilson ever gets in trouble, Tevin Coleman's a good option. I would pick up Tevin Coleman past the 10th round. If you're talking about 12-man leagues, if it's a 10-man league or 8-man league, I would get him probably 8th round, 9th round. I would take a flyer on him like how people would take a flyer on Mark Ingram or how they took it on Melvin Gordon last year. Around the same area, just because Tevin Coleman, if he could stay healthy, he has the great ability. Only on PPR, I'm saying this. PPR because of points per reception, as I've explained in the previous episode. We need to make sure that we get running backs that catch and run. Tevin Coleman has the talent, which is what you want. He has the opportunity, which you want. And along with that, he's got no one else really to take this position from him, which is another beautiful thing you want. So Tevin Coleman is someone worth the risk, like a Mark Ingram, like a Melvin Gordon, Philip Lindsay, James White that you did in last year's draft around the same time. His receivers now. Corey Davis. We've talked about Corey Davis a lot on the show. 65 catches, 984 yards, 5 touchdowns. Average 15.1 yards per catch, which is 15th in the NFL. That's good. Zach Wilson has a good arm. He could send it deep. Corey Davis could be a deep threat. He could stretch the field because you have other people like the other receivers I'm going to name that can stretch the field, but they're more, within the 15, more of an Alex Smith type targets. Zach Wilson has Corey Davis, who is a good veteran receiver. He has been there. He could tell him any tips that he's learned from Ryan Tannehill, because Ryan Tannehill is another viable quarterback in fantasy football. Ryan Tannehill is a top 10 fantasy quarterback in total next year just because he has a higher completion percentage and low-key more throwing touchdowns than Patrick Mahomes in the last 30 games. Ryan Tannehill has sneaky QB1 numbers. Sneaky QB1 numbers. So just, if he's still there in the 10th round and you don't have a quarterback, take a flyer on Ryan Tannehill. He'll definitely do you good. But yes, Corey Davis could teach him all the sauce. He'll help that Jets wide receiving core tremendously because even though he's not a number one receiver, he's almost like a Jarvis Landry where he's kind of a one, but he's enough of a one to get open and to get other people open and respect that he deserves. The other receiver, the actual Jets receiver, Jamison Crowder, had 59 catches for 699 yards and 6 touchdowns last year, 11.8 yards per catch. Yeah, he's more of the shallow under guys that I was saying. You stretch the field with Corey Davis. You stretch the field with Tevin Coleman, even like spreading out on the side. Jamison Crowder will be open, under, shallow, over the middle. That's exactly what you need for a Zach Wilson. Oh, I'm panicking. I can't look anybody off. I don't know how to look a safety off. That's what it's my Zach Wilson being scared impression. I'm scared. I don't know who to throw to. Oh, look. I'm looking straight forward because that's all I could see, and I see a guy running in the middle of the field. Jamison Crowder has the big playability. He could get open. Injuries hurt him, but this receiving core is deep enough, and I'm going to keep explaining why. Not only does he have Corey Davis and Jamison Crowder, who are both wide receiver 2s in fantasy football, borderline wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3s, but he also has Keelan Cole, who's a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 in fantasy football. He had 55 catches, 642 yards, and 5 touchdowns for 11.7 yards per catch, 0.01 yards less than Jamison Crowder. So they're pretty much the same thing. It's the same exact thing you're getting with Keelan Cole. Keelan Cole doesn't get hurt as often. He's younger. This is barely going to be his 4th year going into the league. Keelan Cole is a big-time receiver that could help out. That's what he's going to do. He's going to help make everyone else better. Because we know Jamison Crowder at some point is going to get hurt, and you're going to be like, well, now they're going to double-team Corey Davis. That boos on my fantasy football hopes. No, because now they have Keelan Cole, who I think is just as viable and just as lethal as Jamison Crowder. Yes, Keelan Cole and Jamison Crowder are the under guys, Corey Davis, and here's the other guy that's the outside guy. Because Keelan Cole is behind the depth chart on Jamison Crowder, technically. Denzel Mims. The rookie receiver played his first year last year, didn't have good coaching, didn't have stellar quarterback play, but he still got 23 catches, 357 yards, and 15.5 yards per catch. That's more than Corey Davis' 15th rank in the NFL. That's why he's ranked top 10 in the NFL in yards per catch. Denzel Mims can stretch the field. So you have a guy you're telling me that you have to worry about catching passes in the backfield in Tevin Coleman. Then you have Jamison Crowder and Keelan Cole on the inside that are going to scare me because they're going to run shallow routes, and they're not just regular receiver, folks. They are definitely wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4s. And then you tell me I have Corey Davis and Denzel Mims, who's barely learning the offense and barely getting acclimated onto the NFL level. Next year, he could have a breakout year if someone gives him a good opportunity, Sam Darnold or Zach Wilson. I am talking to you. But even though they want Wilson, reports are saying that they are not going to trade Sam Darnold. Because there's another report just saying that GMs are only willing to trade a 3rd rounder for the darn man. Sam Darnold, only a 3rd rounder. That stinks for him because he's at least a 1st round talent. People just can't see it. And I think that people know that the Jets are desperate and that they're a terribly ran organization. So on top of that, you're not going to try to give him the best offer. If you see a guy who doesn't know how to trade it with anyone, like he's like, oh, hey, I'll give you my Xbox and you give me, let's do an even trade. You give me $5 and I'll give you my Xbox One, the new one that came out. I'll give you all the stuff to you. You're going to be like, yeah, for sure. For sure, that's what I'm going to ask for. But if he tries to come back to me and he says, hey, I got a PS5, the newest one, and I got all the controllers, I'll sell it to you for $1,000. I'll say, why? You just said you'll sell it to me for $5 earlier with the Xbox One. I already see how your trading negotiations goes. You're not that witty. So I'm just going to say, no, I'll give you $5. No, but I'm not going to do it for $5. I know you're not going to be able to trade this with anyone else. I'm speaking to the Jets as a whole. I know you're not going to be able to trade your PS5, Xbox One, whatever you're trying to trade, because everyone's just willing to give you $5 because they see how you trade in the past and they see how you kind of are as an organization. And Sam Darnold has done nothing but regress in his past 2 years. Yes, that is due to the Jets being the worst ran organization, but let's go to 2018, his first year. 2,800 yards, 17 touchdowns, 15 picks, 59% completion percentage. But that's his rookie year. Okay, 2019 comes. 3,000 yards, 3,024 to be exact, 19 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, 61 completion percentage. Okay, he dropped his picks, he picked up his touchdowns, he picked up his yards, he picked up his completion percentage. All gradual, little improvements, but I see improvement, and that's all you need from a second-year quarterback. Remember, Peyton Manning threw 20 picks his first year. Peyton Manning was not the type of guy who was just going to come out hot and just start winning Super Bowls. He worked into being the man who he was and the Super Bowl Hall of Fame legend he is. Then 2020 comes, and you're like, well, Sam Darnold, it's your time. It's your time. Here's the keys. I'm giving you the keys to a car with no engine in it. Try to turn it on. And poor Sam Darnold, 2,200 yards, 9 touchdowns, 11 picks. He was hurt sometimes, but 59% completion percentage is a no bueno. No bueno on the fantasy football show. That's not to make you a champion. If Sam Darnold is at the helm, I would not draft him. But Corey Davis and Jamison Crowder have my eyes, because Jamison Crowder is a PPR machine who will at least get you 10 fantasy points when he's healthy. He only did it 3 times where he didn't give you 10 fantasy points when he was healthy. Other than that, he's on the board all the time. And I just like me, GMs just don't want to roll the dice on Sam Darnold and are scared to be held accountable. I'm also scared to be held accountable because I'm giving you guys all the sauce on fantasy football. And I'm saying, yeah, let's be champions. Let's do this. And how am I going to say let's be champions if I'm saying go draft Sam Darnold and this guy stinks and he makes you lose your fantasy championship? Don't draft him. Only people I'm interested in are Corey Davis, Jamison Crowder. Wait till round 8 later on because the Jets are a terribly ran organization. And that's where dreams go to die. But I just made it really, really sad by talking about death. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. But we do not talk about that at the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. And when we come back, we're going to talk about all the buzz around the NFL. The Eagles also made a trade with the Dolphins. We're going to talk about all the people that were signed and their fantasy implications with it. And at the end of the show, I'm going to explain why and what IDPs do and what they can do for your future fantasy football league when we come back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Hey everyone, at home or wherever you are listening to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. I am so happy that we are at the second half of the show, and we are going to talk about the news and everything that's going on around the league. It's a lot of big things been happening, but first we're going to start off with my least favorite football team, the Philadelphia Eagles. They recently just made a trade over the weekend with the Miami Dolphins. And you know what? I could see what they were doing, but I could also not see what they're doing because the Eagles are a very interesting team. But they traded the number 6 and the number 156 overall pick in exchange for the number 12 and 123rd overall and a first-round pick from the Miami Dolphins. It's crazy stuff. So basically, the Eagles gave the Dolphins the 6 and the 156 pick, which is later down the line. So that's not even something to worry about, but they still got another pick out of it. So, and the Dolphins, in exchange, gave up to the Eagles a 12 pick, so the Eagles are now at 12. And that's big because the Eagles reportedly only traded back from the 6th spot because they believe the Bengals will take Jamar Chase at the 5th pick. Jamar Chase, the phenom receiver out of LSU that didn't play last year, but played on the 2019-2020 national championship team for LSU with Joe Burrow. And that they would honestly just be okay with getting at the 12 Devontae Smith or Jalen Waddle if they were to fall. Because like I said, in the first 10 picks, it's looking like most of them are going to be quarterbacks. First pick, you're going Trevor Lawrence. Second pick, probably Zach Wilson. Third pick, Mac Jones or Justin Fields. Now the Panthers have one of those picks. Panthers are probably going to get a quarterback. What about the Falcons? What if they want Justin Fields? Because Matt Ryan's 35 years old, and he's not getting any younger. So now this is the perfect time to get a quarterback with a top 6 draft pick. The Broncos, they're not completely sold on Drew Lock either. They are also thinking about getting a top draft pick at quarterback. So there's a lot of people that want a quarterback. The Eagles are just okay with saying, you know what, we'll just add a different receiver, or they'll just get Kyle Pitts at tight end, the all-star phenom that's going to be amazing out of Florida when it comes to fantasy next year. If he goes to the Eagles, I would like it just better because it seems like with the Eagles, they run a tight end heavy offense. They like to give it to Zach Ertz. They like to give it to, Trey Burton at the time. Now it's Dallas Goedert. So Zach Ertz is now gone. They have they could just put Dallas Goedert on one side, Kyle Pitts on the other side, and just work the same type of offense. It's nothing different. But with new head coaching, new quarterback, there's a lot of different things. So I don't know what the Eagles' identity exactly is because they are the East Coast Raiders, but they can at least get a receiver, and I'm so happy. I'm so happy. Oh, the Lions. The Lions also want Jamar Chase. I'm just so happy that they are not going to mess up Jamar Chase's stock value because I am very high on Jamar Chase. I would draft him over Keenan Allen next year, depending on the situation. Granted, depending on where he lands. But if he lands in a favorable offense because he has talent and all he needs is opportunity. If he has talent and opportunity, which doesn't always mean playing time opportunity, it could also mean is the quarterback going to throw the ball to him? Is he going to be able to give me that pass in the corner, or is he going to be Jimmy G in the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl and overthrow Emmanuel Sanders and cost them a game? That's something the Eagles would do. That's something Jimmy G would do. But that's not something that's going to happen to Jamar Chase, at least with those two teams. Yes. So the Eagles drafted out of their pick, which is funny. The Dolphins drafted out of their 3rd pick to go to the 12th with the Niners, then gave that pick right back to the Eagles and just accumulated a bunch of draft picks. So now the Dolphins really just don't care what anyone could tell them. The Dolphins are going to be set for the future. They have their organization is now being ran efficiently and better. They're starting to weed out people. Even with Kyle Van Noy, they made a mistake on that. That's when you know it's a big franchise move. They said, I know we signed you to a big contract over $20 million, but we're still going to release you if we don't feel like you're going to fit the system or if you're not going to work out for us. We're here to win championships. We're in a division with the Patriots, even though the Patriots did stink last year, and I don't think they're a good fantasy offense next year. They're still the New England Patriots that won 7 Super Bowls, or 6 Super Bowls. Tom Brady's won 7. That guy's crazy. And then you still have the Buffalo Bills, who are the number one fantasy offense, in my opinion, going into next year. The Dolphins are just going to stack up on these draft picks and say, okay, you guys are ready for the short game? Get ready for the long game, because that's what we're in it for. So that was one of the things. Leonard Fournette just re-signed with the Buccaneers, and all that's left for them to do now is bring Antonio Brown. Can you believe it? Leonard Fournette is going back. He's going back to the Bucs. That means they got everyone back. They got Shaq Barrett. They got Levante David. They got one of their linemen. I forgot what his name was, but they got one of their guards. They just re-signed Chris Godwin. They got now they got Leonard Fournette. Crazy, because Leonard Fournette was just released by the Jaguars days before the 2020 season opener. I remember we actually drafted a couple days before he got released, and my friend who drafted him was really high, like third pick, saw that and he was like, oh no, and then he actually traded him. He traded him for Aaron Rodgers, and that was a good get for him because he didn't have a good quarterback. But just remember, if you think that was a good pick, you're like, oh, I traded Leonard Fournette and won with it in the end, because Leonard Fournette was a great championship running back, but not the great fantasy football championship running back we need. Just remember, that guy also traded me Derrick Henry, so he's not that smart. But Leonard Fournette was released by the Jaguars day before the 2020 season opener. It was hard for him to adjust to the running back committee in the beginning. That's what I noticed, because he's known to be the big guy. He's the number one pick from LSU. That's what he is. He's an animal. And he showed that in the playoffs. In the playoffs, he went for 448 yards, which is the most yards from scrimmage out of anyone in the NFL. So he had the most yards. Out of any athlete in the NFL. And yes, that includes Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. I'm talking about people who catch, or rush, put yards on the ground, not quarterback throwing. Because obviously Patrick Mahomes threw for 300 yards, 200 yards, that accumulates. But the most yards from scrimmage, 448. When Ronald Johnson missed weeks 15 and 16 and the first week of the playoffs, he went for 225 yards and 4 touchdowns in those 3 games. He has what it takes. If you look at his best year on the Jacksonville Jaguars, 1,152 yards, 76 catches, 522 yards catching. So he gives you 1,600 scrimmage yards with 76 catches. PPR, that's amazing. That's a little less, but almost as good as Alvin Kamara numbers. Leonard Fournette in that Bucs offense is very vital and very key for them to be a run-first offense. Ronald Johnson gets more hurt than Fournette. They should all be vaccinated now, so there should be no more COVID-19 scare. But they have to go under COVID protocol, and that was the main reason why Leonard Fournette was out a couple games throughout the year. He was too inconsistent, but next year, draft him late. Don't draft him early. He's not gonna. If he gets you 1,000 yards, that would be amazing. But they have too many good receiving weapons too for him to get that 1,000 yards. Because you could be like, oh no, he's gonna give me like what Mark Ingram did on the Ravens that one year. Not that 1 year, not last year, the year before that, 2019. That's what he's going to do. He's going to give me like over 1,000 yards, a good amount of touchdowns because he's rushing in the end zone. No. The problem is the Ravens had no other receivers. Tom Brady has Mike Evans, who he threw over 10 touchdowns last year to. Chris Godwin. If he gets Antonio Brown back, speak about a diva who needs the ball all the time in the end zone. Then he has Gronk, his boy, who's just a huge target. 6'7", you can't teach that height. Like, there's too many weapons on the Bucs team for me to be convinced on Leonard Fournette. I need to see more throughout the year. Next year, I'm pretty sure they're going to put him in more packages, but they still love Ronald Johnson. They're going to easily split 700-800 yards each, and they're just there to win Super Bowls. That's what they are. I'm here to help you win fantasy championships. They're there to win Super Bowls, and that's not what I'm about. But speaking about Ravens, the Ravens are signing former Chiefs wide receiver Sammy Watkins to a 1-year deal worth $6 million. Sammy Watkins is great. Don't get me wrong. He's been a premier receiver. Last year he was Obviously hurt like he is every year for the past 3 years. 37 catches, 421 yards, 2 touchdowns. His career is great, 4,665 yards, and that's more than double than all of the career total of the current Ravens receivers, which is 2,032 yards. So if you doubled all the totals for the current Ravens receivers, double that, and then you get what Sammy Watkins done in his career. That's how much better he is than all the receivers. Let's look at all these terrible, terrible receivers that we would never draft in fantasy football, and I would never, ever recommend for you to draft in fantasy football, so we could see how the Ravens distribute the ball and see where Sammy Watkins would lie. So, Marquise Brown, number 1 receiver, played all 16 games, had 58 receptions on 100 targets. 100 targets! Think about that. And I guarantee you, 20 of those targets to 30 of those targets were just thrown over his head or just out of his direction. So he's catching half of his targets, 1 out of every 2 catches, which is not an efficient rate. Bottom in the NFL. 769 yards, 8 touchdowns, and that's the best you're getting. That's the best receiver you got. Hands down, bar none. 58 catches, 769 yards, 8 touchdowns. Is that what we're going to draft? No. I would much rather Jamar Chase. I would draft Jamar Chase in the 3rd round of the fantasy draft before I draft Marquise Brown at all next year. Just know that. That's how I feel. Then we have their second leading receiver, which isn't even a receiver because it makes sense. It's Mark Andrews. 58 catches on less targets because he's more of a, Lamar Jackson is not much of a thrower, so what is he going to do? He's going to throw it into the middle, throw it when he gets panicked because what does he do? I'm going to scramble left and right, left to right, left to right. Oh, I'm panicking. I need to look in the middle of the field. Who's there? Big target, Mark Andrews. 701 yards, 7 touchdowns. So you're telling me your tight end put up just as much yards and 1 less touchdown than you? And you're the number 1 receiver? That's why in Mark Andrews, you could draft him 8th round. I would just go a little later because he gets hurt. I don't like that Ravens offense. They don't have anybody that threatening anymore, just at the receiver position. So I feel like you're just going to get double teams on Mark Andrews because they know this is what he does. He literally played 2 less games and he had as many catches as Marquise Brown. What does that mean? That means they want to give him the ball more. If he played 16 games, he would have more catches and he would have been the number 1 receiver on their list. Then it goes to the second receiver who's on this list, Willie Snead. On 13 games, had 33 catches on 48 targets, 432 yards. But guess what? He's not even there anymore. So now he's not there. They have Marquise Brown, Mark Andrews, and then the next best receiver after those guys is Miles Boykin. 33 catches, 266 yards. Oh, but he's been hurt. No, he played every single game. He played every game, and that's the best you're getting from Miles Boykin. So you have Miles Boykin, Marquise Brown, and Sammy Watkins. Tell me how much different that sounds in Marquise Brown, Miles Boykin, and Willie Snead. Willie Snead and Sammy Watkins are the only thing I switched. Doesn't sound much different when it comes to fantasy. I'm not sold on them. If I'm getting anyone from this Ravens offense, I'm getting J.K. Dobbins later, but I'm getting J.K. Dobbins before I'd get Tevin Coleman, but after I would get Chris Carson. No, I'd get him before I'd get Chris. No, yeah, after I get Chris Carson. Just because they have Gus Edwards, they have a running back by committee, and Lamar Jackson is the ultimate running back. If there's any quarterback you're getting with your 3rd, 4th pick, it's going to be Lamar Jackson automatically because his rushing ability is off the charts. Speaking about rushing ability off the charts, Kenyon Drake, we haven't talked about, just went and signed with the Oakland Raiders. A 2-year deal worth up to $14 million, which is questioning everyone around the league. He is now not the running back for the Arizona Cardinals. So what's going to happen on that run-heavy offense? While Gruden said that they have Kenyon Drake mainly to be the pass-catching guy. He's going to catch all the balls because Josh Jacobs shouldn't be out there every single play because he does get hurt and he runs over 20 times a game. You can't have him be catching the ball too because his running ability is more valuable than his pass catching ability because pass catching ability isn't anything that's stellar like a LT or a Reggie Bush. He's just going to catch the ball and move forward and try to do a couple running back moves. He wants to catch the ball because of his competitive nature, but now Kenyon Drake is going to be there, but behind Josh Jacobs, that's a first round pick That's a big guy that's in front of you. Not, physically, but just Josh Jacobs and what he does as a whole. He's that whole offense. Since 2019, he's rushed for 2,215 yards and 19 touchdowns. You don't just get that in 2 years by being a scrub, averaging 8 touchdowns a year. Josh Jacobs is one of the better quarterbacks. Kenyon Drake's last year's numbers were 239 rushes, which is a lot of rushes. If you're rushing over 200 times, you had a good workload throughout the year, so you are a RB1. 955 yards. Like I said, 4 yards per carry. If you're getting 4 yards per carry, everybody likes that. You're at least moving the chains. 4 times 3, boom, baby. That's 12 yards, first down. That's quick math. They got 10. He got 10 touchdowns. And that all accumulated to 167 fantasy points. Kenyon Drake was a great fantasy option by himself. If you draft Josh Jacobs, you have to draft Kenyon Drake. Now, you're not drafting Kenyon Drake with your first 5 picks. But if you have to get him where that Tevin Coleman, where you could get Marvin Jones, where you could get Robert Woods, where you could get, who am I blanking out on, Gabriel Davis, you're going to have to get the flyer on Kenyon Drake instead. Because we know Josh Jacobs is going to be hurt a game or two, or they're going to sit him or rest him because he always gets hurt, and it's not even him, it's just the position and the sport. And you know Kenyon Drake's going to come in for the Raiders, and he's going to ball out. And if he's going to catch in the backfield, who knows if they're going to do exactly what the Cleveland Browns do. John Gruden may have saw what the Cleveland Browns said, hey, I'm going to do that Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb thing. Josh Jacobs, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, and Kenyon Drake. It works perfectly. Works beautifully. So Kenyon Drake, if you draft Josh Jacobs, you better bet your behind that you have to get Kenyon Drake. Because mark my words, I'm telling you, he is going to be someone that you're going to need for the Raiders, and he will help you in the late playoff push. Because Josh Jacobs doesn't always score touchdowns too, by the way. There's a lot of games where he was held with singular points. After his first week's performance where he scored 3 touchdowns, never scored more than 2 touchdowns in a game. And that happened one other time. That's it. And that was against the Kansas City Chiefs at one time. That's it. So, I don't know. All I'm saying is make sure you get Kenyon Drake. Kenyon Drake could be his highest, his ceiling, and his fullest potential to me is that he is Kareem Hunt now. Where he's his floor, where I think it's just going to be ugly, is that he's going to be like Tevin Coleman and get 400-something yards, 300 yards receiving, and then get his work. But he's going to be someone who's too inconsistent for us to want to get in the first 10 rounds of fantasy football. Chargers just got a big body. They got Jared Cook. They signed him to a 1-year deal up to $6 million. Jared Cook's an old man. He turned 34 in April, but he's still 6'5", and you can't teach that. 254 entering his 13th season. It's good because Hunter Henry left. This is good for the Chargers. I would definitely get Jared Cook before I would get Mark Andrews in fantasy football, and here's why. Jared Cook is a huge red zone target. A big reason he wanted to go there, too, he said, was because of Justin Herbert. The Chargers haven't had a tight end produce as many as 9 touchdowns in a season since 2014 by... oh, you guessed it. Antonio Gates, the best Chargers tight end of all time, and might be one of the best tight ends of all time. His size is a great mismatch. They still have Keenan Allen on one side, which you have to double because he's impossible to guard off the line. When I mean off the line, when he starts his route, when he starts his foot fire, whatever he does to create separation, Keenan Allen is that guy. And that is why he's a top 20 fantasy receiver. Mike Williams on the other side, who's not a top 20 fantasy football receiver, but is a top 30 fantasy football receiver he's in that Jameson Crowder territory, along with his big playability. He makes separation in the field, and he makes you have to worry about going deep. And then you have Austin Eckler underneath, who's a good running back, and not only that, a good pass-catching back. So he'll catch the ball in the backfield. Austin Eckler, who's a top 10 running back in fantasy in my eyes, makes everything a lot easier for Justin Herbert. And then Jared Cook is not competing with anybody. The second person on the depth chart is Donald Parham, who had 10 catches, 159 yards, and 3 touchdowns. No competition, so your talent's going to meet your opportunity as long as you stay healthy on the field. We love it. We love it in fantasy football. Justin Herbert threw for over 4,300 yards, 31 touchdowns, and only 10 picks. He's efficient, throws touchdowns in the red zone last year. Threw 20 touchdowns, only 1 interception. You know one of those, or 2 of those, or 3 of those, or 4, I think maybe even 7 touchdowns are going to Jared Cook. Inside the 10, Justin Herbert, 13 touchdowns, 0 picks. Who do you think he's going to look for? Because Austin Eckler's not always going to be a guy who could run it within the tackles. He's a pass-catching guy. You know who he's going to look for? The guy who's 6'5". 6'5" Jared Cook. I love Jared Cook in fantasy football next year. That's just some news around the NFL. When we come back, we are going to talk about IDPs and what their importance is to your future fantasy football league. When we come back, stick around after the show.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
We are pretty much at the end of the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, but we still need to talk about IDPs, individual players. Individual defensive players, sorry. The ID does not stand for individual. It stands for individual defensive, and the P stands for players. I just love being your fantasy football host so much. I love it. I could cry. No, I'm not going to cry, but I love doing this show, and I'm so glad that we are going to talk about this. It's funny because I was actually doing a lot of research on it because I've never done any IDP type leagues. I know the guy who's supposed to give you fantasy football advice hasn't done it. Why was he giving me advice? Well, we're kind of learning it together. So right now we're going to talk about like the basic. What is IDP? What it does for your league? How to draft an IDP, and It's real fun. You want to do different things. You don't always want to do the same stuff over and over and over again. Different is good. Different is good. Me, I don't understand that concept. And you know why? Because I like the same shows. I like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Curb Your Enthusiasm, or I'm watching South Park. Other than that, I'm watching sports. And that's it. I don't watch anything else. People say, watch this movie, watch this TV show, do this. How about I just watch the same reruns? And how about I just laugh every single time because it's my type of humor and I love it. That's how I am. I'm grumpy. I'm a curmudgeon. So be it. It is what it is. But at least I'm here to win fantasy football championships, and that's why I'm trying to help out people, man. And if I learn more about this stuff, then I'll learn the sauce and help you guys out more because I just have a sick way of knowing stuff. Have you ever seen The Hangover? When Zach Galifianakis is at the poker table or the blackjack table and he's trying to count all the cards in his head and all the numbers show up. That's me with fantasy football. Hands down, that is me with fantasy football. Don't be like me. Try to be different. Try to make an IDP league. So that's why I'm going to expose you guys to it. I'm going to explain what it is, tell you everything about it, and then you determine for yourself whether you want to do it in your league or you just want to be like me, just like Ryan. Hey, I'm going to watch the same TV shows all the time, and not care because that's just who I am. And that's how I roll. Okay, what is an IDP league? Well, fantasy IDP leagues have been around, for a long time, but even though they're not for everyone, IDP leagues add an entirely new level and challenge and enjoyment to the game of fantasy football. And if you never played an IDP league, it could seem confusing, but I feel like, let me just break this down for you and we'll get it, We'll be able to understand it together. IDP versus standard defense. So in most standard fantasy football leagues, which is ESPN, Yahoo, anything else in between, each team has the option of drafting and starting a team defense because you could choose either the Bills' whole defense, the Broncos' whole defense, etc., etc. You choose a whole defense. It's not based on one player like this. That team defense typically scores points for you based on how many points are scored against it and how many big plays the defensive unit generates. So you have to rely on the Patriots, or you have to rely on the Bears. The Bears' fantasy football defense was a top 10 defense, but barely at 10. They weren't a good fantasy football defense. You could just pick them up off the waiver wires. It was nothing really impressive about them. But, on the other hand, if you get Roquan Smith had sack value, had over 10 sacks last year. He adds tackle value. There's a lot of big things that go along with it, and you're not getting a whole negative side to it because you know the defensive guy you want and you know what he can do. Even Jalen Smith, one of the better IDP players. The Cowboys defense was awful last year. Bottom in the NFL. Fantasy football defense, they were worse than the Jaguars and the Jets. They were terrible. But Jalen Smith gets a lot of tackles. He's in a lot of the plays. So since he's getting a lot of tackles, that's more points. And it's just like I say, they don't always have to be the best fantasy football player when it comes to offense. You just need talent plus opportunity. So while this format, makes it easier to manage the team because, you get the defensive, you get the Bills, you get the Broncos defense, whoever, and you just have them. You don't have to worry about one person or like who's good on defense. You just are like, okay, I just trust them as a whole. But unfortunately, a thing that we've all noticed and that I've noticed is that this new NFL has led to higher powered offenses. So, I mean, you're seeing Patrick Mahomes, you're seeing Drew Brees, you're seeing Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, all these guys that have been doing it, making better numbers, more numbers, throwing the ball more yards, throwing for more passing career touchdowns because that's just the way the newer NFL is going. Quicker pace means more points means more wins. Now, the downside of having a whole defense is that since it's a whole defense, it's not all the time their fault. Maybe they only allow 3 points until the fourth quarter, and then they allow 2 touchdowns, and that's it. Just because Aaron Rodgers is throwing back shoulder passes to Devontae Adams, you can't guard him. So most of the time, or some of the time, it's based on the quality of the offensive unit more than the defensive unit. And also, where's the fun in choosing an entire half of like a single team play for like one category? Imagine if you played, I got the Patriots offense, I got the Bills offense, instead of starting a quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. So with an individual like player format, you start with specific defensive players instead of an entire defensive team. Some IDP leagues start with just a couple of defensive players. Others start with as many IDP players as offensive players. And it's very important because each defensive player is scored based on their individual performance. So they earn points for tackles, sacks, interceptions, defended passes, and of course touchdowns. You get to score the same amount of touchdowns, even though it doesn't happen as likely, unless you're Jeremy Chin, week 13 in the NFL, and you took 2 touchdown fumble recoveries to the house, which my friend Cameron actually had him in his league. I was laughing. He was telling me about him. I'm like, Jeremy Chin? I'm like, I've never heard of him. Is he a rookie? He's like, yeah, he's a rookie. I'm like, okay, start him. 2 fumble recoveries to the house. Yes. So, the IDP scoring systems are just like as diverse as the offensive scoring systems. So just as with the offensive side of the fantasy team, it's critical that you understand IDP and like the lineup requirements for your league. So first, I think it's important you should know like the scoring system. You should make the scoring system. However the commissioner does it, know it. Even though IDPs have been around for a while, there isn't a standard scoring system. Just like on the offensive side, it's like there's PPR and non-PPR. So you get catches, you get points for catches, and you get points for not getting catches. So that's offensive side. But on the defensive side, they have tackle-heavy scoring and sack-heavy scoring, which is very, very interesting because tackle-heavy leagues are just like they sound. They diminish the pass rushing specialists and reward the guys making the tackles. That's Jalen Smith. That's Darius Leonard. That's Bobby Wagner. These are the guys that have over 100 tackles on there. That's Fred Warner. These are all linebackers. You'd want probably linebackers because defensive linemen don't get that many tackles for the simple fact that they have a guy draped on them grabbing them. Most of the time they're grabbing you in the NFL. It's not just, oh, hey, I'm lightly getting you, I'm grabbing you. And it's just, this is all interesting to me. I was reading it because I was like, what the heck? Really? When I was doing my research, there's tackle heavy and sack heavy. So I was thinking, what would I prefer? Just me personally. And I think I'd prefer tackle heavy if I want it to be fun for everyone. Sack heavy just for me. But tackle heavy is if you probably want to make it more inclusive because all they have to know is who has the most tackles, and you're more likely to get tackles than sacks. The leading sack person in the NFL will get no more than 19 sacks to 20 sacks a year. And 20 sacks, oh my God, they're having a great year if they have 20 sacks in a year. And then the leading tackler is going to have over 150 to 170 tackles. So it's kind of obvious there that there's more tackling than sack heavy, and that kind of leads me to the point to where it's like tackling is more like PPR, where it's more available, it's going to happen more often than sack heavy, which is non-PPR standard leagues, where you don't get points per reception, you don't get, the extra points that can make it fun. Why do you want to just get regular old, standard stuff? Like, why would you want a standard scoring? I don't get it. The more points to me, the better. And it's not always geared towards you. A lot of people get mad at me sometimes as commissioner, and they say, hey, are you making these things geared towards you? I'm like, no, I'm not even changing any rules, first of all. The only thing I changed was like how the defense is scoring because people weren't too happy with the defense getting that many negative points. But other than that, I'm like, I keep it standard. And you always make sure you take a picture of the rules, a picture of the rules, and you send it to your entire league in a group chat and then you say after, this is the rules. So do not get mad at me if anything happens in the rest of the year on the league because I showed you the rules. You know as much of the rules as I do. There's no cheating involved. Here's the rules. People don't like to read the rules, and at that point, it's up to them. They're just left out in the ocean right there because rules are everything, so you have to know your scoring system. Tackle-heavy guys, you need them, especially with, you want, 4-3 middle linebackers. Weak side linebackers and safeties are just the main beneficiaries of, a tackle-heavy league. And the players taking the biggest hits, are 3-4 outside linebackers. Those guys don't really get high tackles just because they're like sack guys. A 3-4 guy is Lawrence Taylor. That's okay. I'm a linebacker. I also go deep, but I'm going to be on the line because I'm also a big boy who has moves and I can rush on the edge. I'm Von Miller. Von Miller is a 3-4 outside linebacker. Do you see Von Miller getting all the tackles in the world? No. That's not what he does. He got only 13 tackles, 8 sacks. Not 13 tackles, 13 assisted tackles, sorry. 46 tackles, 8 sacks in his 2019 year. And then the year before that, 48 tackles, 19 assisted tackles, and 14 and a half sacks. So you can see, he's a sack guy. That's, if you want a sack-heavy league, if you want that standard format, you want something that has less scoring just because you want it to be no, I need to find the gem in the rough. You need to put in the man hours more to work and get these points. Points are few and hard to come by, so if someone gets a sack, it's a huge thing. You probably want that too if you don't want individual playing, IDP league playing a huge factor, I would say, in your league. If you don't want it crazy points and you're like, I'm tired of Darius Leonard, I'm tired of Devin White, all these guys getting more tackles and points, fantasy points than, say, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, J.K. Dobbins, Kenny Galladay. You're like, why are they getting more points than these guys? Even worse, what if they got more points than Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey? You're sick. You're disgusted. You're like, this is even taken away from the fun of fantasy football for me just in general. So that's what you would do. Because if they fail to, record a sack in a game, odds are you're stuck staring at a goose egg, and there's nothing worse than a player giving you 0 points on the week, offensively or defensively. So that's what you would look for. But on the flip side, if you got a TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney. Well, if Jadeveon Clowney joins the Browns, I would get him. But if you got one of those guys, a Roquan Smith, you're okay because, so there's solo tackling usually equals to 1 point. So if you get 1 point for a tackle, you're going to get 4 points for a sack, and that's huge. What if someone gets a 4-sack performance? That's already terrible at math. 4 times 4 is 16. 16 points. 16 points. The sack was actually going to register as many as 5 tackles or 4 tackles would. If you get points for tackles for a loss, you get additional bonus for the play. Your tackle-heavy linebacker is going to have to record 5 solo tackles to offset 1 sack. And, that's just kind of giving you, the upside of, the sack-heavy or tackle-heavy. I like tackle-heavy because it's just going to equal a lot of points. A lot of points is fun. But if you don't want it to take away completely from the game, but there's someone in your league complaining, we need something different. I'm a commissioner. I know. Someone's always complaining. Someone's never happy. I'm like, you lost. That's why you're not happy. Give me your money. Because we usually play for money here in my fantasy football leagues. But, yeah, those are the 2 types of, and I just kind of gave you 2 perspectives so you could just decide for yourself. Decide. And then when to draft individual players, when to draft these IDPs in your league. And before you can answer that, you have to know how many IDPs each team must start with, Basic IDPs usually use around 3 to 4 individual defensive players. In this scenario, you should probably take one of them late in the draft and then carry a few IDP reserves. The waiver wire it's going to have so many people. The waiver wire, think about if there's only 3 to 4 spots. Think about every single defensive player there is out there. Think about all the standout rookies that come out. I mean, come on, there's so many people you could just get. I'd be like, I'm going to get Matt Judon this week. I think he's going to do good on the Patriots because Bill Belichick's a defensive mind and he was a great pass rushing guy off the edge for the Baltimore Ravens. What if Yannick Ngakoue balls out with the Oakland Raiders at defensive end? Who knows, dude? You don't know. So there's going to be so many people on the waiver wire, you'll be fine. In deeper leagues, you could start 2 defensive linemen, 3 to 4 linebackers, and 2 defensive backs. That's what my friend was doing in his league. He was explaining it to me. Some leagues require a defensive end and defensive tackle to be listed separately instead of being listed together. So you could do that because defensive tackles are likely to get less sacks than a defensive end. It's just how it goes. Ndamukong Suh is Ndamukong Suh. Aaron Donald is just the only exception. He's literally a man among beasts out there because you're like, how does he win Defensive Player of the Year and he only gave me 13.5 sacks? How does he win that? Well, it's because he's a defensive tackle and he's getting 13.5 sacks. His 5.5 career sacks. That's not how that works. That's not how the NFL works. Defensive tackles don't get that many sacks. I imagine if you want to get a defensive player, you'd probably get Aaron Donald. And then people, instead of wanting cornerbacks, you could list safeties and DBs. You don't have to lump them together. You could separate it, cornerbacks and safeties. Some people just want to be different. I don't know. If you really want to make it complicated, do all that. I just think the tackling and the 3 IDP spots is standard, and it's a good way to ease yourself in. Some elite guys are drafted as early as the 3rd round because you could get Darius Leonard. He's going to give you 150 tackles on the year. And if he gives you 150 tackles on the year, come on now. That's if you just say that's 1 point. If you say it's a tackle-heavy league and it's 2-3 points, it's already 200-something points. You're already halfway through the fantasy as much as anybody else in fantasy football. And that's just only off tackles. That's literally only off tackles. So I think you should ease in, but I'm telling you, a guy like Darius Leonard, if you were to just get him early, he doesn't get that many sacks. He only got 3 sacks, but he got 3 forced fumbles. He got 86 solo tackles. So, and combined tackles, he got 132. His best year is 163, which was his rookie year, but he's not going to fall off. Darius Leonard is on a stout Colts defense. IDP leagues are just another variation of the same game you basically just play now. It might seem overwhelming at first, but you may not know that defensive players as well as you know offensive players. But that's why I'm here, and I'm here to give you a nice little list, of who I see as like the top. I got like top 10. I'll give you top 10 IDP players I like. Number 1, Darius Leonard. Hands down. He gets tackles. If it's a tackle league, you're getting him right away. Then, after Darius Leonard, because Darius Leonard, I'm saying, hands down, just overall pick. Don't even get anyone else because he's part of a great defense. Roquan Smith. Roquan Smith was great. Last year he had over 139 combined tackles and 4 sacks, 2 picks. He was one of the top 5 in the NFL in tackles. Roquan Smith is going to keep doing that because the Bears defense doesn't have that many like great pass rushers. So they're always going to hit the second line. They're going to hit what's his name? Khalil Mack. They're going to hit the linebacking core. They're going to hit the secondary. They're not going to really always, be stopped at the line. So Roquan Smith's going to get a lot of opportunities like he did last year. I love Devin Bush. Devin Bush next year without Bud Dupree is so, so good. I know last year he was hurt. He only played 5 games, but he's going to be someone that's definitely a force to be reckoned with on that Steelers defense. He had, 2 picks, 109 tackles, and 72 solo tackles his rookie year. Oh, just watch out. And a fumble, and a forced fumble, and 4 pass deflects. Devin Bush is going to be someone to watch out for. Devin White. It's funny, I have the Devins right after each other. Devin White is going to be someone who's awesome because think about that linebacking core for the Tampa Bay Bucks. They have Shaquille Barrett, Levante David, and Devin White. Devin White had 97 tackles and 1 pick last year. 1 forced fumble with 9 sacks. He's going to do that. And 97 tackles. That's 97 solo tackles. 140 total tackles. His 97 solo tackles were 3rd in the NFL. He tied for 14th in sacks. He tied for 3rd in the NFL in tackles and 14th for sacks. That is no one to be reckoned with. Devin White is definitely taking my number 4 spot on people you should draft in IDP leagues next year. At the number 5 spot, I got Bobby Wagner. Bobby Wagner is definitely someone who's been consistently doing it. He did drop off in tackles, but he's had over 1,200 combined tackles. Last year he had 138 tackles, 57 assists, 3 sacks. You know how terrible that Seahawks defense was last year. Expect Bobby Wagner to get a lot of these plays. At number 6, Jalen Smith, linebacker, as I said before, on the Dallas Cowboys. Jalen Smith is someone who's going to see the ball a lot because the Dallas Cowboys had the worst defense in the NFL last year. Tremaine Edwards at the number 7. Tremaine Edwards on the Buffalo Bills is definitely someone who's going to be like, these are people, the people you should pick in the the 3rd, 4th, 5th round should definitely be only the top 3 people I listed, which was Devin Bush, Roquan Smith, and Darius Leonard, but everyone else kind of wait on. But if they fall at the right spot, I think they're good because Jalen Smith had 64 tackles? 154 tackles and 65 assisted tackles. So that means he's not even getting that many assists. It's just straight on tackles he's getting on with 5 pass deflections and a pick. This guy is all over the field. I know he's not helping the defense much, but he's helping your IDP league a lot. He's definitely helping your IDP league. And then we have, like I said, Tremaine Edwards at the 7th spot. Blake Martinez. Blake Martinez had a standout year for the New York Giants. I was actually really surprised because he was a good linebacker out of the Packers, out of USC, my team. But he had 151 combined tackles, 3 sacks, and a pick. That Giants defense only got better, adding what's his name? The guy from Sarah and Adoree Jackson. They had Adoree Jackson. They're trying to focus. They're trying to make that a different team. They added Kenny Galladay. They have weapons. They have Saquon back. Another guy, Jamal Adams. That defense is terrible. My goal is you got to get people who are on terrible defenses and then that get tackles all the time. And then next, Zach Cunningham at the 10th spot. Zach Cunningham is a sleeper because Zach Cunningham, linebacker out of, what's his face? The Houston Texans. linebacker out of the Houston Texans, is no one to play with either because he had over 164 combined tackles last year with 3 sacks. And you know how terrible the Texans are going to be. This guy's going to Darius Leonard it out there. He's going to be all over the field, left to right. He's going to know that I need to be the best player out there at outside linebacker because if I'm not the best player, then not even if I'm not the best player, it's just he needs to be the best player so then he can get a new contract somewhere else because he doesn't want to be part of the Texans like no one else wants to be. But that was all great fantasy football news, and that was great fantasy football talk about IDPs. I hope that you learned a little more about individual defensive players. Let me know what you think at GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. I love you being your host. I didn't say I love you, okay? It sounded a little weird. I love being your host. Thank you for tuning in. And make sure to follow us, like us, and subscribe us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. I could be here all week. I'll be back with another episode later in the week. We're going to talk about a lot of good stuff. But as of now, thank you and adios.